Good morning and happy Tuesday 10 at 10. I hope all of you had a wonderful Labor Day weekend and with lots of rest and lots of great food. But we're not here to talk about food, we're here to talk about baking. So, for those who do not know the concept, we get questions. All the questions have been sent to Bakerpedia either through Facebook or other social means. And then we try our best within 10 minutes every Tuesday to answer your question. My name is Richard Charpentier. I am the owner of Baking Innovation, a consulting product development group. And it's my pleasure to help you out. So let's get with the first question today, which is on the farinograph. And for those who might not know, a farinograph is an analytical tool that is used to measure the quality and the absorption of flour and consistency. So to ensure that the bakers will know what to do to change whatever, needs to be changed. And, flour is nothing but a commodity ingredient that grows and gets affected by season. So let's get started. So the question is, they say they have an old farinograph and they want to know the reference to the weight of flour that they should be using, and what is the relationship between the weight of flour and the moisture of flour. It's a very good question. So first of all, the model for a farinograph is usually 300 grams of flour. And there are some others that are 50 grams. So you will see, and I'm assuming you will see if it's a 50 gram or 300 gram capacity. So after that, there's a solution of water and salt, usually 6% of sodium that is made. And then in the pipette, you have to hydrate to the 500 Brabender unit line. So as soon as you reach that, you will calculate how much water did it take to go to the BU line of 500, and that's your number. Yes, flour will affect the type of flour, and the moisture within your flour will affect how much overall moisture you are adding into your mix, because typically most flour are on a 14% moisture basis, but you can have different varieties coming from different milling at about 12%. But how you're going to know how much moisture is basically how much it's going to take for you to go to your 500 BU line. And that's the difference. It's going to be compensated. And if you take the dough, you can do a little bake test to understand what's the difference, but at least it'll give you a good mixing tolerance index. It'll give you a peak, it'll give you a stability line, and you'll be able to measure one flour versus another. And that's what I would do. Hopefully I answered your question. And if you're in need for more information, I highly recommend you go to Bakerpedia website. There are like tons of great free material, videos, and educational publication that you can read at your leisurely time and educate yourself a little more on the subject of farinograph or analytical tools. So now moving on to the next question. What about milk? What would be the equivalent of powdered milk to liquid milk replacement? So as what I've done as a general rule, so if I'm using fresh milk in my recipe, I go on the basis that milk is 90% water and 10% solid. And same thing for, eggs, etc. But not 10%. What I'm saying is that you break it down to how much moisture is in your product and how much solids. So in your case, the answer would be 10%. So if you have one pound of milk that you're using, I would put 0.1 pound of powdered milk, and the remaining would be water. So, and again, different manufacturers, different milk, different variations and vendors and product, etc. So that's a rule of thumb. Try it for yourself. You're the baker. Touch, feel your dough. If you think it's a little wet, a little too tacky, then cut the water just by a little bit. But as a rule of thumb, it would get you there very rapidly, maybe with a small adjustment, and you should be right on to using that. And remember, different milk, so you're browning, and you might happen a little earlier or differently as you're using a powdered versus milk, but you can create the adjustment and again, using powdered milk, minimize any waste of milk, because of the short shelf life on fresh milk versus powdered milk. But very good question. Now for our last question, cold yeast fermentation. I'm intrigued about the cold yeast fermentation. Is that technically what I do when I leave my dough to slowly proof overnight in a refrigerator? So yeast, again, I'm assuming we're referring to Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is a species of yeast that all the baker's yeast that we're using today, because there are many different varieties that people could be using where, in the brewing industry, they're using beers that are better at lower temperature. But in the case of baker's yeast, so this, when you put it in the fridge, and a refrigerator is usually between, depending if it's on the top of your refrigerator, on the bottom, because temperature, hot air rises up, it would differ. But usually you'll be between, let's say, 40 to 48 degrees. At those temperature, the dough will move very slowly, but not very much. I worked in bakeries where we're using a slow fermentation, and we would use basically between 55 to 65 degree Fahrenheit, and that was a good slow temperature. And the optimum temperature for the yeast, when you get to the 78 to 82 degree Fahrenheit, that's when it accelerates. That's when it's maximum multiplication. So yes, you can use a cold fermentation that basically that's putting it more into a dormant stage. So the yeast will feel slow and not very energetic. So your fermentation will happen, but if it's too cold, it might not move very much. It's about finding, like I said, a 55 to 65 Fahrenheit temperature as sort of an optimum slow fermentation where the yeast can work without working too fast. So by doing so, then you can extend a longer fermentation time without having to worry about your dough being overproofed. So I hope that I answer your question. Thank you very much for all your questions. I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday, rest of the day, and happy baking, and we'll see you next week. Take care.